Max Verstappen's big drama with F1 officials after Abu Dhabi race. Max Verstappen has made the 2024 Abu Dhabi race ending way more exciting than we thought it would be. The F1 officials gave him a 10-second penalty and 2 penalty points on his racing license. It looks like the Dutch driver had a lot to say about how the race judges were acting. But here's the big question. Will this fight continue in 2025 too? And will there be more drivers who can challenge Verstappen and put him in tough spots like Piastri did? It was actually Verstappen who made the mistake this time and got punished for it. The F1 officials and Max Verstappen have been arguing back and forth ever since the Baku race, where there was drama about swearing. It's clear that the final race in Abu Dhabi made things way more fun for us fans because of how Verstappen acted after getting his penalty. Right from the first lap, the Dutch driver saw a chance to get past Sainz and at least one of the McLaren drivers, which happened to be Piastri. But even though Max was on the inside part of the turn, he was nowhere near being ahead of Piastri, and the crash was totally his fault. This is what made Piastri say that sarcastic comment about the move being perfect for a world champion. Unfortunately for Verstappen, he didn't get hit by any of the other drivers who were racing hard at turn 1 and kept his car in the middle of the pack. Meanwhile, Piastri ended up at the back and had to fight really hard just to score 1 point in the race. Piastri's words weren't the smartest thing to say at that moment because for a really weird reason. He got a 10-second penalty too when he couldn't brake in time and hit the back of Colapinto's car going into turns 6 and 7. So all in all, the Australian driver probably should have made his point by racing better on the track instead of complaining over the radio. But there was a lot at stake here. Verstappen's actions could have completely changed who won the team championship. We saw Leclerc make up tons of ground and finish third after starting in 19th place. But Norris drove such a strong race that the Ferrari team couldn't hope for anything better than second place in the team standings. Now you could easily argue that Piastri had a bit more space to use on that inside part of the track. And if you know Verstappen well, you know he's always going to try and squeeze his car in there no matter what, just like he did back in Saudi Arabia in 2021. It's not against the rules if he can pull it off, but if he causes a crash, which he did this time because his car was nowhere near being ahead of the corner and he expected Piastri to just back down because he was putting pressure on him, then a penalty makes sense. F1 gave an official explanation for why the Dutch driver got a 10-second penalty and 2 points on his racing license, bringing his total to 8 points. In their official letter, F1 wrote that car number 1 tried to pass car number 81 on the inside going into turn 1 but never got far enough alongside. Both cars crashed shortly after the corner. The race judges decided that the driver of car number 1 was completely at fault and caused the collision. Since we now have a new race director and judges, it was expected that a 10-second penalty would happen. The fact that Verstappen acted surprised when he had to serve it and insulted the F1 officials with a sarcastic question afterward shows that maybe this fight is still going on, and will very likely see this continue in 2025 too. No safety car to help him. Verstappen had to serve his penalty at a really bad time for his race. This hurt any chance he had of making it to the podium, let alone fighting for the race win and matching Hamilton as the most successful driver in Abu Dhabi. When leaving the pit lane, Verstappen sarcastically asked, "Could we ask for 20 seconds? Stupid idiots." Then Max went on to talk about the 2 penalty points on his racing license. And being Max, he made sure to say what was really on his mind when he added, "Maybe I'll make sure to get to 12 racing license points when the baby's born. Then I can go on daddy leave." Of course, this made the British media make lots of comments. They've been really critical about their relationship with Verstappen and how they seem to favor British drivers. Martin Brundle and Croft have been pretty clear that this is not how a champion should behave. They said the last thing he should do is talk that way to the referees who are just following the rules, which are a bit stricter under the leadership of the new race director Rui Marx. However, there were some questionable missed calls from the same judges during the whole Abu Dhabi weekend, like when Russell blocked Lawson, and a similar thing happened in São Paulo when Norris and Russell started an illegal warm-up lap when Stroll crashed his car into the barrier on the original one. The bias, whether we like it or not, is somewhat there from the British commentators. But in Verstappen's case, they were absolutely right because you could clearly see that Verstappen was nowhere near the best spot to make his move. This time Piastri was the one who was right, even though he had the outside line. And yeah, we can't forget what Verstappen said not too long ago, where he said that whenever he has the inside line, he's the one who's going to attack and no driver will pass him from the outside. This was said more about defending rather than attacking, meaning Verstappen won't let anyone pass him from the outside racing line. But we can clearly see that there's something about him and having drivers on his right side that's really hard for him to accept when talking about it. Verstappen said, "Me personally, I don't give someone room on the outside of the corner when I race with someone. He will not be able to pass me around the outside. That is how I grew up racing. Some drivers are just a bit more passive in racing. That's just how they are. And I know that in F1, I can't hang around the outside because they'll push me off. It's a racing instinct." But this situation could easily get out of control next year because Verstappen will very likely have a new teammate since Perez finally admitted that his seat is in danger and they'll have a meeting to discuss it. We're not saying that if Tsunoda or Lawson comes in they will immediately start competing for championships, but they're definitely going to be faster drivers compared to Perez, and with mistakes like this that we can expect much more often because of the increased pressure from Ferrari and McLaren, the second driver at Red Bull will be able to take advantage a lot. There's a lot to think about here, and the fight between Verstappen and the F1 officials is very unlikely to end anytime soon. We can't forget that the swearing incident hasn't really been resolved either. We heard Leclerc swear a couple of times on his radio ever since the problem became big news, and he hasn't gotten penalized for it yet. But for a driver of Verstappen's level, one who actually got called out by Russell as a bully and someone who never had a driver stand up to him like Lewis did back in 2021, it's easy to understand that this will be used as motivation fuel not just for 2025 but also 2026 in the future of Verstappen at Red Bull, if there even is one. Toto Wolff has also spoken his mind about the penalties from F1 when it comes to swearing on the track. While you would expect him to support Verstappen, which he has done quite often in the past, this time he sided with the governing body. The argument was pretty strong and hard to argue against when talking about the swearing penalties needing to be punished even harder. The team boss of Mercedes said, "I have a thought about the swearing. Like Russell said, he has an 8-year-old nephew who races go-karts and watches all of that. I have a similar 7-year-old that races go-karts and watches everything. It's the first time a few months ago that my child said, 'What the F?' and I said, 'Where did you hear that from?' He said, 'From the drivers.' So it's easy to understand that drivers will be under a lot of pressure to keep the swearing out of their mouths while they are driving, or F1 should do something about broadcasting these messages. But no matter what, it's not a nice situation to be in if you're Verstappen and you're trying to battle the British media bias, the terrible car that you now have in your hands, as well as the F1 statements that seem to be fully against you. On top of that, the 4-time world champion has gotten into a fight with Russell, which might get worse on the track starting in 2025. This is mostly because the British driver is expected to have a very aggressive approach when racing Verstappen, trying to prove that he's not like Norris and that he can be the next world champion after Red Bull's star driver. With all of this in mind, what do you think about Verstappen's actions in Abu Dhabi and the words he said to the F1 race judges? And more importantly, do you think that his insult of calling the judges stupid idiots will get him in a lot more trouble than he already is? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the recent drama between Russell and Verstappen, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.